Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Dragon's going to join us again tonight. Boy, he's on a roll around here. I enjoy the conversations with him, and I know that he's become a fixture for you guys too. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm kind of winging it tonight, because honestly, I fell asleep. I did, and I dropped my pen. Hang on, I'll be right back. There. So yeah, we're just kind of winging it, but that's okay. Sometimes the best shows that we have around here are the ones that have absolutely no plan whatsoever. Now, Dragon is going to join us to talk about the politics behind all the stuff that we've been covering at, McGill University, the Gaza, all the stuff. We're going to talk about that. The rise in anti-Semitism, the real reason for these protests, which is a global communo-fascistic revolution. Opinions will vary, as I'm sure you've noticed. We'll get into all that. Also, we're going to have a TrueSpiracies segment tonight. It's Sunday, and I came across a report that claims to have solved the JFK Jr. plane crash mystery. So, how can I resist? Got to touch on that. If they have the answer to the long-standing question of what caused JFK Jr.'s plane to go down, well, we're going to share it with you here tonight. Oh boy! Also, Hamas. A new poll shows that they are losing support. True or not? I don't know. You can decide. We'll just show you the information. And what else do we have here? Oh my goodness. Isn't that enough? Oh, I'm going to share a story about going shopping today. Yeah, not so much grocery shopping, but I just went to a few stores, and I'll tell you about my horrific shopping experience. And I had video shot, but I can't get it uploaded because I shot it on my phone, and I just didn't have time. And I've just been working so much, and I had to get caught up on some other work around here that I honestly fell asleep, which only left me about 40 minutes to get ready for this whole thing tonight. I woke up at, what time is it? It's showtime. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So before we bring Dragon in, let's just touch on some of the top stories of the day. Let's start over in France. A coalition of the French left that banded together managed to defeat the right side of the political spectrum in legislative elections. They've won the most seats in parliament. They don't have a majority, but the coalition does give them the government that gives them the power, according to all the polling projections coming in. And as a result, it looks like France is going to be somewhat destabilized. This puts Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance in a second place position, no longer in control of parliament, and the politicians on the far right, as they put it, are suffering a bit of an embarrassing setback after a lot of people were predicting victory from the right. Either way, Macron was predicting a civil war if either of the two sides emerged victorious, and that is what has happened. And even though the left appears to have emerged victorious in this political battle, it looks like we have riots in the streets led by the left. This is what it looks like over there tonight. I don't know, does not look good. We have more footage here. Here we go. Immigration, the top issue here. Concerns about crime. And we have more here.
positivos.
You know, all that going on. What can I say? Um, and I'm not sure why this time around this march of the Patriot Front group down in Nashville is getting so much play on social media. Some people say that the national or that the Patriot Front group is actually just a bunch of feds. Other people say no, it's the real deal. They say that they are a white supremacist, far right political group. In any event, they marched through New Orleans in response to, or sorry, what am I saying here? The Black Hebrew Israelites apparently marched through New Orleans in response to the Patriot Front marching in Nashville. And this is what that looked like. The Patriot Front group, I don't know. I just don't know what to make of it all. And I'm not sure why this weekend all of this is getting so much play. But here's New Orleans.
Flag, Jesus Christ is flag, and I left this world, I left this world, I left those streets, I left those streets. Moses told me, Deuteronomy, if we grow laws, we're going slavery.
And not everything is a riot. I don't know if this is a riot or a celebration. This is back in France again, where some people are celebrating the defeat of Marine Le Pen. This is what this crowd looked like. I have to tell you, it's very hard to get real context just from social media and what you're reading online, and even from, media in general. It's kind of a myopic view all the time now. You think you're viewing the entire world, but you're only viewing what people are showing you at any given time. It doesn't give you a broad perspective on the world. But here's what this looks like. Okay. I'm going to need to take just a short break here. I need to queue up some other video for you. I'll be right back.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are Mavericks, we are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So there's this Khalistan referendum coming up. July 28th is when they're going to vote. This is being promoted out in Calgary. And they had a gigantic convoy. There, you think that the freedom movement puts on convoys. Look at the size of this. Hang on, let me just, there we go. Look at the size of this. I'm working on it here. I'm working on it. Here we go. Here's a video. Still trying to click on all these things. There we go. No. Let me get rid of all this. There. Too many things. Sizable turnout. I think you've got the idea. Now, if you go back, okay, there was, I guess, so this is a pretty sensitive area. And there was some vandalism apparently in Edmonton involving they were aimed to disrupt the promotion of the Khalistan votes, which, as I say, takes place July 28th in Calgary. And these pro-Khalistani demonstrators say they will defy the Indian government, and they're determined to cast their votes on July 28th. They posted this to social media today in response to, I guess, banners being vandalized. Here, let me show you this. This is the separatist movement, right? This is, yeah. This is all related to the relationship between Canada and India, the assassinations on Canadian soil.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਅਲਬਰਟਾ 'ਚ ਰੈਫਰੈਂਡਮ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ 'ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਮੁਹਿੰਮ ਚਲਾਈ ਹੋਈ ਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਆ ਇਸ਼ਤਿਹਾਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਬੈਨਰ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਲਾਏ ਸੀ 2 ਪਰਸੋਂ ਲਾਏ ਸੀ, 2 ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਮਿਰਵੁੜ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ, 2 ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਭਾ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ। ਇਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਭਾਰਤੀ ਸਟੇਟ ਦੇ ਕਰਿੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਪਾਲੇ ਹੋਏ ਗੁੰਡਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਸ਼ਹੀਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਫੋਟੋਆਂ ਦੀ ਬੇਅਦਬੀ ਕੀਤੀ। ਤੇ ਨਾਲੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੀਰਤਨੀ ਭਾਈ ਬਲਵਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਗਿੱਲੇ ਦੇ ਪੋਸਟਰ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪਾੜਿਆ। ਕੌਮ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਇਹ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਨੇ, ਸਿੱਖ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਨੇ। ਇਹ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਰਦਾਸ਼ਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ। ਬਾਕੀ ਚੇਤਾਵਨੀ ਇਹ ਆ ਭਾਰਤ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੰਦੇ ਮਾਰ ਲਏ।
We'll need to get somebody on this program who can give us some intelligent analysis of what is going on with all of that. I have only, I have some knowledge, but I don't want to speak too much about it because I need to educate myself more. I know that it's all about the Khalistani separatist movement. Anyway, let's, is Dragon there? Are you there, Dragon? I see you're in the back room, but I don't see your camera on. When you're ready, you just make yourself visible there and we'll bring you into the stream. Here we go. Okay. So my shopping experience today, I needed some spark plugs. I thought, no big deal, right? And I needed to get a couple of things at the grocery store. So, when I was a kid, let me just go all the way back to that. I worked at an auto parts place as an intern. It was an intern program through my school. Back in those days, no computers. You had to really know your stuff if you wanted to work at an auto supply, like an auto parts store. No computers. They had giant racks of catalogs with all the different parts for all the cars listed by number. And then in the back, you had all the parts sorted, organized, part numbers. You'd look stuff up in these giant catalogs that you had up at the front desk. Someone would come in and say, do you have such and such a part or a spark plug? You'd go and if you didn't know, you had to look it up in the catalog based on the manufacturer, and then you had to go find it in the back. But back then, we had pretty much everything in stock that you needed for all the different cars. And the guys working there, the experienced guys, they knew where everything was. The stuff was mostly manufactured domestically. There was an increasing amount of inventory that was being manufactured offshore at that time. This would be back in the mid-1980s, early 80s. Well, boy, things have sure changed. I went to go get spark plugs today. I could have ordered them online, but I thought, no, I'm just going to go down to the auto parts place. So I go down, and I had phoned, actually, a couple of places, and they didn't have them in stock. I need 6. And they didn't have 6. They had like 2. I'm like, 2? They only had 2 left. Now, I admit the car is old, but so what? It's just spark plugs. Normally, we would have had them. I go down to the auto parts place today. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're closed. They're supposed to be open until 4, but they're just closed. I don't know why, so I can't do that. So I thought, well, okay, I'll go to Canadian Tire. They'll be open. So I drive over to Canadian Tire. What an atrocious store. I wanted to get some water, some filtered water. They moved their water machine. So I'm wandering through the store with my water jug. The water machine's nowhere to be found. I ask around. They said, oh, yeah, it's up at the front. You have to go up to the front. So I go to get the spark plugs. I go over to the auto parts place. They don't keep them out on the floor anymore, where I used to be able to just go help yourself. And they had like a catalog there. You could look up whatever you needed and you could pull it off. No, too much theft. So they keep them all behind the parts counter now. And the guy looks them up in the computer and he didn't have any. He had 2 spark plugs to fit my car. And they were $21 each. I'm not paying $21. I'm not giving you $21.99 each times $21.99 times 2 for 2 spark plugs, and I need 6. No, yeah, you can get them online for way less. I'll get them. Anyway. So no spark plugs there. So I thought, all right, I'll go to all the other auto parts places are closed now. I'll go to, I don't know, TSC stores. Of course, it's not TSC anymore. It's now PV Mart. So I'll go over there. They don't sell spark plugs anymore. It's supposed to be your farm auto supply. No spark plugs, except for like lawnmowers. All right, I'll go to Walmart. No spark plugs. Nobody had any stupid spark plugs today. So then I'm wandering through the Walmart. Used to be able to get some basic spark plugs at Walmart. I'm wandering through Walmart and I'm looking at the prices of things. Back to Canadian Tire. The stupid water machine. They put it up at the front, and I said to the young lady, I said, where's the water machine? Oh, it's over there. I said, yeah, I need to refill my jug. She said, oh, it's broken. It's broken? How does the water machine get broken? I went, okay, it's broken. Yeah, I guess maybe I don't know, man. Whatever. So no water, no spark plugs. And I'm like, what's wrong with the economy? As I was looking around at the prices over at Walmart now, I'm just looking around at not even just groceries, but over in the hardware section, the price of motor oil off the charts. Like $50, $60 for a jug of oil. I'm going through looking at paint. $59.99 for a gallon of paint. Oh, I'm sorry, that's 3.78 liters. $60, and that's on the end cap. That's the cheap stuff. Then I'm looking at spray paint. It's like $22 for like a can of spray paint. I'm like, $5, man. No, like $20, $21.99, $18.99, and then there's tax and environmental taxes. Like everything is like off the charts. It's too freaking much. I wander over into the grocery section, just the price of groceries off the charts, $7, $8 for a box of breakfast cereal. It's just wheat in a box with high fructose corn syrup poured all over it, right? Minimal nutritional value, $7, $8. Anyway, guys, I did work at an auto parts place a few years ago too, for better part of a year. And it was a parts source. And when I was there working, I was just, I was mindful of my time as a youth working as an intern at an auto parts place. And the difference was everything in the place now is basically manufactured in China. It's very, very worrying because I remember working there and I was organizing all the brake pads. And I came across some brake pads that were manufactured locally here by Bendix Corporation when the factory was open. And I picked these things up and they were just old, probably for a model of car that wasn't popular anymore. And actually the reason we were organizing stuff is we were throwing car parts away, car parts for models that were obsolete. So we were filling a dumpster and just chucking all the old parts, stuff that was still in inventory that wasn't selling because it cost more to keep it on the rack in stock than it did to throw it away. So they needed to make room for more inventory, literally throwing it in a dumpster. Some of it's off to be recycled, and another one just goes straight to the dump. Brand new auto parts, like dumpsters full. But these parts, I pick them up, and it says "Made in Canada" right on the box, and I go, and all this dust coming off them. But not anymore. You go to you are buying your cars, you're fixing your cars these days with parts that are, generally speaking, made in China. You're driving Chinese cars, or at least 50% Chinese now, especially with cars that are being repaired with parts. Just to let you know. And today was just another wake-up call. The economy has changed. We're shifting over into this online economy, whether we like it or not. Everything is going online. And the reason the stores are not stocking things like these spark plugs is you need to have a lot of them, a wide variety of them. And if they devote shelf space or even warehouse space to these things, that costs money. And because people are buying stuff online more, the volume that they're doing with these particular kinds of products, it's sort of a specialty item, right? Especially for an older car. They're not stocking the stuff anymore. So the only place you're going to get them is either by going to a specialty shop where they may even need to special order the stuff, or you have to order it online yourself. And if they have to order it at the shop, why wouldn't you just order it online yourself? And you're probably going to get it cheaper ordering it online. So I hear people saying, we don't want this and we don't want this and we don't want that. We don't want the CBDCs. We don't want central bank digital currency. We don't want all this online stuff. We don't like digitized economy, blah, blah, blah. You're not stopping it. It's coming whether you like it or not. It's already here. And it's not necessarily more convenient. I mean, the spark plugs, you can get them shipped, and they can show up in a day or two. But to just go down now and buy what you need at the corner store or even the department store, not really happening. And then just even, last week, 2 days ago, just strolling along through the strip plaza where the pharmacy is, just down the street here, so many vacant stores, even in this small town. Commercial real estate under pressure. I mean, it's still pretty much, not a lot of vacancies, but too many. Quite, probably 20-25% of the plaza has vacancies now. It's just another sign of the changing retail landscape. And I don't think I like it, but we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to roll with the changing times. Retailers are going to have to rethink the way that they are doing business, because they're all under pressure, even places like Walmart. And if we're not careful, we're going to end up with a bunch of gigantic, deserted shopping centers, and even our urban area, our suburban areas, our suburban shopping malls are going to end up looking like gutted donuts with giant holes, just like our downtowns. That's what happened when with an increasingly mobile society, our downtowns got hollowed out as people moved out of the downtowns, out into the suburbs, had cars. I'm sure you know the history. We built shopping centers in suburbs, and people spent less and less time shopping downtown in their communities. As a result, a lot of cities ended up with giant holes in the center, areas of economic depression. Same thing, I think, is potentially going to happen in suburbs if we're not careful. Anyway, just some observations. And if I get that video loaded up, maybe I'll take you on a little shopping tour and show you that the price is not right. The price is all wrong. Maybe tomorrow. Stay with me. We're going to come back, and it's inflation. Thank you, Justin. We'll come back in a moment with Dragon.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's bring the man in. He's back in his lair tonight. Hello, Dragon. Your microphone is muted, sir.
My fault. What's up, guys? How are you?
I'm just fine. I'm glad you're here tonight because I didn't really have any plan of action tonight. As I explained, I kind of slept in a little bit. I got back from my horrific shopping experience, and I guess the stress was just too much. It overwhelmed me. I was exhausted, and I laid down for what I thought would be about 5 minutes, and I was just zonked out. Of course, I am, as I keep telling people, I am getting old. So I need my nappy time like Joe Biden.
Well, you know what? To explain a little something, the other day I wasn't much getting sleep, right? But there's a little secret here. I did a lot of martial art in my early days, say, and well, I will say that meditation is part of my schedules all the time. So I mean, that keep me. It keeps my mind pretty much zen and my health in top shape. As
How
you
do
can
I how do I meditate? How do I get to a place of zen?
Well, it all starts with being on a comfortable status. I mean, you just put yourself on your bed or sitting on the best chair that you can find. Um, First of all, after that, you got to breathe, okay? And you got to actually concentrate yourself on your breathing. The breathing is really important. So always listen to your lung getting expand and so on. So I mean, and a good trick is the boxing breathing techniques, which is you're in breathe 5 seconds and you exhale as much as you can without counting. And then you're taking another breath, but as much as you take more breath, you can count more than 5. And then you get like at a serenity type of moment in your, and it doesn't take long.
Okay, I'll maybe try that. Mostly the way I do it is I lay down, I pass out. When I wake up, I check to see if I'm breathing. If I am, I'm grateful to be alive. That's about it.
Check the pulse too.
That's right. And sometimes I have to, these days, I have to remind myself to breathe.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Take a deep breath, Rick. It's okay. You're still here. You old fossil. Oh man. So we spoke earlier today, on the phone, you and I, and you had been watching some videos, which is these days usually dangerous. And what did you tell people, I guess, what you were coming across, and I guess we can start there, and that'll kick off the conversation that I guess you wanted to have tonight.
Well, it was a beautiful podcast from the Hudson Institute, and they were speaking about what was going on from the inside point of what's happening with the pro-Palestinian movement, if I can call it this way. So yeah, this is what it is. And to tell you the truth, it's more than what the eye seems to look at. So, I mean, yeah, there's more behind the truth here.
Right. So yeah, this was and through our conversation, of course, I sort of directed you over to that particular video because I'd seen it over the last day, and it just I thought it was an excellent discussion because we had. I don't remember who it was in the video because honestly, when I was watching it, I wasn't watching it. I was zen, laying in bed at the time because I run stuff, and I was listening to it. But I think there were 4 professors
Yeah.
from the Hudson Institute, and they were really talking about identity politics, the rise of the far left, why we're experiencing these protests on campus that appear to be pro-Palestinian, but are really what I've been saying. They are what we're dealing with is really far left political activists protesting on campus as part of a communist / fascist revolution.
Yeah, well, it's a sort of a totalitarianism tool, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tool for fascism and mostly for what you called a fascist / hybrid. It is exactly what it is, and the people that is behind that is actually the people that they are pointing at. So, I mean, that's kind of weird.
Let me just see. I wasn't going to run anything from it. We were just going to have the conversation, but let me, I think I'm going to see if I can find the video. Maybe because there were at the beginning of the video, it's the guy who, man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Let me find it here. Here it is here. I've got it. Okay, this guy here really provides a good snapshot of what this is. Let's bring it up. I'll share this portion of it with people because he sums it up, and then we can have a broader discussion about what he says. Here we go. This is the agendas of Jew hatred.
Campuses to see that there's a lot more going on here than just protests about Israel or hatred of Jews, that there are lots of other agendas at work. We want to get to the bottom of that, try to understand it a little better, and maybe even come up with some ways of addressing it. I have a fantastic panel here. I can't wait to get into the discussion with them. I'll just very quickly introduce them. We have from Arizona State University, Professor Paul Caris. He's a professor in the School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership at Arizona State. And he was the founding director of that school. We have, to my immediate left right here, Elon Berman. He's a senior vice president at the American Foreign Policy Council here in Washington, D.C. To my far left is Daniel Schwamenthal. He is the director of the AJC, that's the American Jewish Committee, the American Jewish Committee's Transatlantic Institute in Brussels, Belgium. And last but not least, we have Hudson's own Liel Leibovitz. He's on the screen there, and he is also an editor-at-large at Tablet Magazine. Paul, let me turn to you. You're working in academia. You're seeing what's going on our campuses up close. It seems to me, at least, that the universities have really been the incubators of a lot of the thinking that we're contending with here. Well, can you just give us a bit of an overview about where is this coming from, and what, in your mind, should we do about it?
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for inviting me, and it's great to be on this panel. Yes, I agree that a major source, maybe even the epicenter of the surge in anti-Semitism we're seeing in America, really starting at least a decade ago, is the American university, especially elite college and university campuses, whether they're public or private. You could probably map that according to where Students for Justice in Palestine has its chapters. I think over 300 across the United States. One further way of mapping this is that the more selective and elite the campus is, the greater the preponderance of faculty on that campus who are propagating the illiberal, postmodernist, and either quasi or fully Marxist views that are hostile to any traditional understanding of America. And then one manifestation of that is what we now call identity politics or identitarian philosophy. So the source of the identity politics is the postmodernist philosophical view that there are no fixed truths in reality. There are only power struggles. There are only categories of oppressor and oppressed. And then the international relations cousin of this kind of identity politics and postmodernism is the view that America is the lead agent of imperialism, has been for 400 years in a sense, first in North America and then globally. So America in this philosophy is the white settler colonial oppressor par excellence of indigenous peoples, of people of color, of the other. And so in a nutshell, the new form of the oldest bigotry, anti-Semitism that we're seeing on American campuses is the mode of identitarian politics, which makes Jews, especially in Israel, but basically Jews anywhere, honorary white settler colonialists. An insight about this is captured in a nutshell by Andrew Sullivan in a 2018 essay, which then was talking about the rise of woke culture by saying, "We all live on campus now." That was the title of the essay. But it anticipates the philosophical foundations of this new anti-Semitism. So this is Andrew Sullivan. The goal of the woke culture now is not the emancipation of the individual from the group, but the permanent definition of the individual by the group. We used to call this bigotry. Now we call it being woke. So you see, we are all on campus now. But earlier in the essay, he described this identitarian woke philosophy in this way. It comes close, this is Sullivan, it comes close to an attack on the liberal project itself. Marxism with a patina of liberalism on top is still Marxism. And it's as hostile to the idea of a free society as white nationalism is. So if you wonder why our discourse is now so freighted with fear, why so many choose silence as the path of least resistance, or why the core concepts of a liberal society, the individual's uniqueness, the primacy of reason, the protection of due process, and objective truth, why these are so besieged, this is one of the reasons. So to fast forward to 2024, after we've seen violently anti-Semitic demonstrations and occupations on elite college campuses, you could also look at the recent protests that surrounded the White House. We could update Sullivan to say, we are all disciples of Edward Said now. I think this represents a crisis of American national culture and also for American national security. And I'll cite another academic, public intellectual. The historian Neil Ferguson tried to capture this in a recent essay by comparing what's happening on American university campuses and elite culture to what happened in the German universities in the 1930s. Faculty and scholars abandoning the liberal and truth-seeking mission of the university to become dominated by sophisticated and sophistic versions of bigotry and irrationality. If the Heideggerian and Nazi philosophy hated liberal Weimar Germany, the strain of postmodernist irrationalism, now heavily present on many elite American university campuses, propagates a hatred of America and of the tradition of Western civilization that produced the idea of America. And it's also, as Walter Russell Mead wrote in his recent book, The Ark of Covenant, it's also the philosophy and civilizational view that produced American support for Israel and has maintained American support for Israel for over 75 years. I'll finish with a note about civic education, which I've been focused on for a long time. First as a professor, a civilian professor at the U.S. Air Force Academy, and now, as Mike mentioned, founding a new department school at at Arizona State University. One cause of the rise of this anti-America and anti-Israeli irrationalism on American campuses is the absence of an American civic education in higher education. Another way to put this is that absence of American civics, higher civics, is an element of the postmodernist, cultural Marxist, identitarian philosophy that's been growing in American universities since the 1968 anti-Vietnam War protests. It's not accidental that American civic education, as part of a liberal arts education, has been eradicated on most college and university campuses. Even center-left and centrist scholars in the past decade have noted this bizarre absence of a higher American civics in the American university to prepare informed, thoughtful citizens and civic-minded leaders. That role has been repudiated or abandoned by my discipline, political science, but the same is true in history and related disciplines. And also university trustees, boards of regents, presidents, provosts, etc., have abandoned this in setting general education requirements. The vacuum has been filled by this postmodernist, cultural Marxist willfulness and irrationalism. It's present among a significant number of faculty in humanities and soft social sciences. It's also now spread, obviously, to students who have been more or less duped by this kind of teaching. Richard Haas's recent book, The Bill of Obligations, talks about the absence of an American civic education, its crisis dimensions for American foreign policy, although he doesn't point to the cultural Marxism and postmodernism as sharply as I'm addressing here. So I'll finish with this more pointed way of seeing why this spike of anti-Semitism is a crisis for America and for American national security. It's that the center has disappeared on the American campus and in elite culture. One way of thinking of this is that the most powerful and well-funded parts of the university and of elite American culture are quantitative studies in STEM, in medicine and health, in the hard social sciences, in the business schools. And at the other extreme, smaller but very potent, are the postmodernist, cultural Marxist elements in the soft social sciences and the humanities. What's missing is the traditional middle, the liberal arts spirit that provides the middle ground and the ballast for the truth-seeking mission of universities and our elite culture, the space for genuine discourse and for debate. And it's also the space for passing along a critical appreciation of the foundational ideas of America and of the civilization that produced it. These are dwindling or even have been eradicated on some college and university campuses. That's the space where the anti-Semitism can grow. The absence of the reasonable center does not provide a good foundation for forging sound American national security policies from year to year, decade to decade on any topic, let alone relations with and support for Israel. You could say this philosophical crisis, as I would call it, is one source of even the near chaos of post-Cold War American foreign and security policies, the inconsistency across the past 30 years, which has been so cleverly exploited by Russia and China and Iran. So I'll finish with that as my opening thought.
Wow, that was a very powerful opening. I've got so many questions to ask you.
That was powerful. I mean, off the top of his head, he sums it up. That was, like, for me, so on point. What are your thoughts initially, Dragon?
Well, actually, he was on spot. And not only that, he did actually, in his first minute, he did add a reference toward also iron sport industry that is also behind, say, some of the fortune. So we'll also argue that Qatar is one of the biggest, sport team kind of thing. You know, I mean, Qatar has a big team. It has a lot of revenue, and probably that some of this will be sum up in there. But the thing is that he was saying a lot of things about Russia and what was going on also with other countries. So yeah, to get on point with that, you see where the communist, if you will, is trying to infiltrate and push on some ideas around, and mostly to the youngest.
Yeah, this has been, as we all know, this is a problem that has been with us for a long time, not just since October 7th. And it isn't just about anti-Semitism. It's the rise of the extreme left. They've been taking over our educational institutions. They have been indoctrinating instead of educating at our universities. And from the universities and colleges, it's gone down to high schools, elementary schools, all the way to preschool. And now you're seeing drag queen story time with young children. This is what the core of the problem is. The thing that's of extreme concern to me as well is that I have people sending me stuff, news clips, information, trying to convince me that everything is the fault of the Jews. And they think that they're freedom fighters, but what they haven't clued into yet is that they themselves are being indoctrinated into this left-wing political ideology, the very political ideology that they've been out protesting and opposing. And now they're supporting it. They're being pulled into it unwittingly. They don't know that they're supporting the very political ideas that got us into trouble to begin with, especially during the pandemic. During the pandemic, everything was flipped upside down. The world was literally flipped upside down. Individual rights and freedoms went straight out the window. Everything was focused on the collective. No longer was I just responsible for me and my actions. Now I suddenly became responsible for the collective. I had to stay home, locked down, because it was my responsibility to make sure that nobody else got sick. Even if I wasn't sick, I wasn't allowed to go outside in case I might be sick. And I couldn't risk possibly infecting somebody else because it's my responsibility to not infect somebody, even if I'm not already infected. It's my responsibility to wear a mask, not for me, to protect me, but to protect everybody else. It's my obligation to the collective. It's my obligation to get a jab in order to protect other people, not to make sure I don't get sick, to make sure other people don't get sick. You see how everything got inverted?
Yeah. Well, I see where you're going. It's kind of what we have said on the phone earlier today, right? When for example, in the 1930s, when the Nazi was a thing and starting to have some holds in the mind of the people, some policeman from Germany was sent to Polish, and most of them would probably argue not to go there because they don't want to do the bad deeds around these part of the world. But the thing is that some would have argued that no, if I don't do it myself, it's like if I would throw the towel and say, Rick, you're up to do it for me because I don't want to do it. It's a nasty job. So it's like it's the same kind of approach. It's the mentality of the herd, if you will, that is being attacked, and you want to be part of one or the other in a way, but yeah.
So what you're talking about is the techniques that were used to manipulate people into doing terrible things to other human beings, including sending them off to concentration camps or exterminating them, killing people. and the conditioning that people were put through in Nazi Germany at the time in order to get them to carry out these
Just
acts.
a
And so you're
mental
seeing
conditioning.
and you're seeing similarities between what happened then and what's going on now. And we certainly saw that kind of mentality take hold during the pandemic when people were actually literally talking about putting people into camps to protect the collective against the unvaccinated. Headlines on major newspapers polling people talking about exactly that. And the mind manipulation that took place en masse to get people to embrace that kind of ideology, that as much as that was being used in Nazi Germany, what people need to realize here is it's the far left and the far right coming together, both of them employing these authoritarian, totalitarian tactics. It's the same basic approach to collectivism that got us into trouble during the pandemic. We're seeing it again right now, and yet some people here sending me information have not clued in. They don't realize that they were opposed to that authoritarianism during the pandemic, but the very people who are doing that to us are now the same people who are out on these campuses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Occupying the space, violating the rights of others, anti-colonialists, anti-American, anti-Canadian, anti-freedom, because they are collectivists. They don't believe at all in individual rights and freedoms, as you have experienced on those campuses at McGill University, where they have said, you are not allowed to step foot on this front lawn because we say so, because we've taken it over.
Mm-hmm.
We're in charge here. You don't get to come in. That's not freedom. And yet I see some people saying, but they're oppressed because, and they're buying into this because this identity politics, this woke, progressive political ideology is all predicated on equality, the oppressed versus the oppressor.
Exactly.
As he said, this has the patina of some new form of political ideology, but at the core, it's still Marxism. That's exactly what it is. It's Marxism, communism, fascism converging. It's all authoritarianism. And what's missing here is the core of liberty, of freedom, the very things that our nation was founded upon in the beginning. Freedom and liberty, individual rights and freedoms. There's not even a discussion of that anymore on campuses or even within our political discourse. It's been completely erased. And with that, they are in the process now of erasing our culture, and everything is being, they're getting people to look at everything through the lens of equality, or even more accurately, equity, which is not equality. Equity is about equal outcomes for everyone. Equity. There's a difference between equality and equity, and almost nobody understands that they're using this word for a very important reason, but we can come back to that. I'll throw it over to you because I've been talking too much.
No, actually, you were on point, and to quote what one of the panelists have said, it's reinventing the idea of the totalitarianism, using the inequality between the social structure and the structure of liberty in our college and university. So basically, this is what it is. You know, they are using those words just to, like I said yesterday, use the right word, you know, to make you adhere and support this idea or this movement by, look, it's not equal here because those people are doing this to us, but we can do these. So we're going to take over this part of the camp and do a campment, or, this part of the lawn here. And yeah, I mean, this is what it is, So
And
it's a great example.
because if one side in a conflict in this power struggle is seen to be oppressed, they then get elevated to a place where, well, we have to give them the power. That's the mentality. But that creates this bizarre, never-ending cycle, if you think about it, because once you give the power to these people, like, they're trying to equal everything out and make sure that everyone gets equal outcomes through equity. I don't know if people understand the difference between equality and equity. Equity is something that is built up over time. You can think of it in these terms. Equity in your home. You work every day, you take your paycheck, you keep paying off your mortgage over time. And the more you pay down your mortgage, the more you own more of the house that you own, to the point where you own 100% of your home. You now own all the equity. The equity is the built up value over time in your property, and you have rights to that property because you have worked for it. That's your equity, right? You built that up over time. But what progressives, Marxists believe in, socialists, what they believe in is equity universally. Everybody is supposed to have equal outcomes. So they're coming for your equity, the equity in your home. They're coming for your property, right? So these progressives, they're saying, well, this group over here is oppressed, and you have equity in your home, but because you're a colonial settler or a Jew or a Zionist, you really have come by this unfairly. You've really stolen it because you're living from a place of privilege. You've had opportunity that others have not had, the oppressed people have not had. So we need to take your property and redistribute that to other people, to the oppressed. And then we get equity. They're equal outcomes. We're going to just redistribute the equity, the accumulated wealth of the entire nation, and make sure that everyone gets the same. I don't think that's fair, because you over here work all your life. And we're seeing that with Trudeau right now and the capital gains tax increase, where he is saying, it doesn't matter if you've worked and you have like an income property or a second property, like a cottage or a second home or whatever you've worked for all your life, we're coming for it. We're increasing the capital gains tax on those properties. And we're going to take that up to like 70% of that. So you lose 70% of what you have accumulated in additional wealth over time, which is not even a true representation of what the property capital gains is, because it doesn't fully take into account inflation either. They're basically, the government's coming and stealing your property so they can give it to other people over.
Well, makes me think about what the WEF was saying for a time, right? I mean, look, if you're not at home, somebody could take your home just because they need to, I don't know, go sleep, have a nap, something, or eat a little something. Then, when you come back, you just throw them out. I mean, I can get your car if you don't use it, just because you're not using it, and that would make less car on the. I mean, it's weird, but I see a similarity here.
And I understand that we have to pay taxes, and I understand philanthropy. I understand that we need to give people a hand up sometimes, and not just a handout. So, I've always understood that there's a place for some degree of socialism within our society, and we've had that for a long time. And generally speaking, it works fairly well because we're a very productive society. So people are willing to pay some taxes to make sure that the least fortunate, the most vulnerable are taken care of in our society. But at a certain point, it becomes excessive. It becomes oppressive of the government to do this to the people, and it becomes a violation of property rights. And the people on the progressive left have no respect for property rights whatsoever. They will take this stuff away. But you see, the little trick that they're using here is that they are using Jews, Zionists, capitalists, America as a scapegoat for what it is that they want to do, as they are going about their business of confiscating your property or lobbying through protests like the ones we're seeing right now, either Occupy Wall Street, which is anti-capitalism, or Black Lives Matter, which is basically a pro-Marxist organization, or what we're seeing on campus right now, which is anti-imperialist, anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist. When we see all of these things, it's they're flipping this around, and they're making, like, I got this thing today from, I won't tell you who. He sends me this thing basically blaming all of the problems of the world on the Jews. And if you go down the list of all these things that says the United Nations wants to do to us, it's just a list that somebody made up. But it's basically reads like a checklist for the Communist Manifesto. It's Marxism all the way down. But they're saying that's the Jews that want to do it to us. No, it's the progressive Marxists who are doing it to us now, and the fascists collectively together. It's what Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government, that's what they are doing to us right now. And what my friend who sent me this stuff today doesn't understand is that the people on campus right now, they're aligned with Justin Trudeau. It's just that when Justin Trudeau and the Liberals speak in public, they have to pay lip service to the Jewish community for politically correct reasons, because they want the votes and they can't come off as appearing to be anti-Semitic, when in reality, they're supporting all the immigration, they're supporting the Arab nations, they're supporting the pro-Palestinian position at the same time. They're playing both sides at the same time. But ideologically, they're collectivists. They are not free market capitalists at all. They are not pro-freedom. They're not pro-property rights. They're let's confiscate everything and redistribute it. And if you get into Jagmeet Singh and the NDP here in Canada, it's even worse. And if you get into the Democrats in the United States, they're basically aligned too with Trudeau and the NDP and the socialists and the identitarians and the postmodernists. That's where all of this comes from. And you can then move into the libertarian wing of things and so on, and you'll find, even more extreme elements of these political ideas. But they kind of fold back into the Democrats, to the Democrat side. This is where people are getting trapped in this populist movement that we find ourselves in right now, which is attracting people from across the political spectrum, and why people who consider themselves to be even conservatives are very confused by all of this. They don't recognize what's going on, and they're being sucked into it, and they're being directed over to information that is basically, it's all, Marxist indoctrination material online that is sucking them in deeper and deeper and deeper and further away from what freedom actually is. Am I making any sense, or am I babbling too much?
From Maggie, there's one comment on the board that I see from Maggie. She's saying that it's NATO. Well, yeah, you are right by saying it's part of NATO, probably. But I mean, it's not.
Sorry, what's that? What's the comment here?
NATO actually is what the pro-Palestinian would call the Jewish capitalist or colonialist. This is the colonialist power that comes around here, and
people are misunderstanding what NATO really is, right?
This is a misunderstood.
this is why people are discombobulated by all of this. The reason being, it's these old. The reason people have not recognized the warning signs is because all of these old anti-Semitic tropes, they've been repackaged in new language. They haven't just come out to say, we hate the Jews. They use the word Zionist now, and that expands things. So you have to begin to understand the language that they're using, because they keep changing it over time. And they speak, I would say, in code is what they do. These far leftists, more so on the left than on the right, but they're both using code words. Zionism is one of the key ones.
Well, between you and me, and someone who's Nazi nowadays wouldn't come out like say, "Hey, I'm a Nazi and I'm pro." No, they won't come out like that. They will use language to say, "Well, I'm not a Nazi, but I don't like the Jewish people."
See, and what they're using is these Saul Alinsky rules for radicals tactics, where they project what they're doing onto the other side and blame what they're doing on them. So when people are saying no to NATO, and when they're blaming it on NATO, it's actually them that's doing it to you. You see, NATO, if NATO was truly as authoritarian as people make it out to be, if the United States was as authoritarian as people make it out to be, countries around the world would look like a lot different than it does today. Not to say that NATO's perfect. The United States has made a lot of mistakes over time, right? But I'd say the US, the West, we get sucked into a lot of these conflicts. We get sucked into wars. We've been sucked into the Middle East. And at times and you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Russia, to some degree, even will get sucked into things as well, but not on the same scale. Sometimes, but they don't talk about it as much over there. Not the way that we do. It's too simplistic to sit there and say this is all NATO's fault. And it's interesting, these everything we blame on ourselves. Everything is the United States' fault. Everything is our fault. And we self-flagellate. We've been conditioned now because of this identity politics and the attack on our own culture to be ashamed of who we are, to be ashamed of being American, Canadian, of our own culture, our own history. As people want to tear it down, we are so eager to appease and to not hurt people's feelings now that Joe says NATO is global. No, I would argue it's the opposite in many respects these days. NATO.
I mean, yes, they are globalists probably in a way, but it's not the first. Okay, look, I will say it this way, okay, guys? If you keep talking about NATO being the problem, sure that there is part of that, but like I say, this is actually the pro-Palestinian humping you on that idea, and you're buying bits of what they are trying to do. So you're probably not a pro-Palestinian or pro-Jew or whatever, but you're still buying part of the rhetoric here.
I'm going to approach it from this way. Imagine there's no more NATO. Imagine NATO falls apart. What happens to the world? Well, the United States probably ceases to exist. These free nations were individual rights, Western countries, if they survive at all, will regress into more authoritarian types of societies. There will be the vacuum left by NATO. NATO has been a shield against authoritarianism. It has been a shield against Islamic fascism. It has been a shield against communism, especially during the Soviet era and the Cold War. We saw a celebration of the end of communism when those Soviet states like Poland, Ukraine, and others were liberated from the old Soviet Union and communism. And we've seen these nations over time join the West, join the free world. What do you mean by the free world? It's the West where the rule of law, the sovereignty of states is respected. It is a respect for individual rights, due process in court, innocence until proven guilty, all of these fundamental things that predicate freedom. That's what the West is. That is what NATO has defended for, well, since the Second World War. That is what it has been about. That is what the Cold War was about.
You take NATO out. I mean, you got first a global economy in shambles. Second of all, you got also like all the territory being under attack, probably for some reasons in a way. And not only that, you got a cultural type of, I mean, it's, the culture is being under attack on the same way. But if you take away NATO, you can also take away the Geneva Convention and all those conventions that has been brought in the history about the human rights and so on. So
Joe is asking a very good question. Let me ask this. Without the United States and its power, does NATO really mean anything? And I would say this. Yes, but without the United States, NATO wouldn't exist. The United States, with its military, has been the world's policeman since World War II. But you see, after World War II, when the United States was the only country with the nuclear bomb, they could have done anything they wanted to. They could have gone around and bombed all their adversaries. They could have gone in and bombed Russia. They could have ruled the world at that point, but they didn't do that. The power has been shared. Now, the other thing that we need to be aware of here is that when people talk about the military-industrial complex, yes, it is a problem, but it's also a solution. It has been the inevitable solution to a global problem in order to preserve freedom. That's what NATO has become. The United States economy has become dependent on or directly attached to the military-industrial complex because of the necessity of becoming the world's policeman. In order to create this shield against communism, against fascism, in order to make sure that nation states around the world in the Western world remain free, the United States has had to build up this immense military over time and maintain it. And the money that has been spent on that over time is one of the things, really, that is what props up the US dollar. That's why the US dollar is the world reserve currency. It isn't because of the gold standard. It isn't even just because of oil. It is because of military spending now. And people will say, well, you see, that's what we're talking about. It like they just want to make money. That's why they keep going to war. It's not, it wouldn't matter if they were going to war or not going to war. Okay? The military would need to be there anyway. The spending would need to continue regardless.
Yeah.
Now they're spending a lot on wars right now, but my point being, people need to understand that, yeah, our economy is dependent. The West is dependent. Now, the United States is dependent. The economy is directly tied to all of this spending. And it's connected to the value of oil. to the price of oil. It's the petrodollar, but it's also military spending. And that happened under Nixon in the 1970s when he took the dollar off the gold standard, made the deal with Saudi Arabia that other nations have to buy oil from Saudi Arabia in US dollars in order to create global demand for the US dollar. And then because the dollar is the world reserve currency, it can then capitalize the financing of all of the military spending, which is then used to create this umbrella of protection for all Western countries through NATO. And other countries contribute as well, but the United States always has been the biggest contributor, investor, if you will, in making sure that freedom is protected over time. If the economy in the United States falls, you see, it is fragile. That's why they're coming after the West on so many fronts right now, the opposing side. They're forming this axis of powers, again, Arab nations, India, Brazil, Russia, China, Iran. They're all aligning together to attack on an economic front.
Yep.
With the BRICS nations, with an alternative currency, to pull people away from the US dollar. They're chipping away at the alliance between NATO countries. They're trying to break up the NATO alliance. If they can erode that, if they can even in Ukraine, if they can.
The surgence of the BRICS right now.
Sorry, what's that?
You see that with the surgence of BRICS.
Yes.
The new economic
absolutely
front of the European side. Well, mostly I think it is Russia, China, Korea also that is embarking to the whole thing. So yeah.
And just as the economy of the U.S. is failing. I wouldn't go like it is in trouble. Excuse me. In this regard, we do have too much inflation because they've been printing far too much money, especially during the pandemic. But I would put this to you. I wouldn't count the U.S. economy out. There's a lot of residual value in the United States in just physical assets that can be tapped into over time in order to capitalize expansion and continued economic prosperity over time, or even an economic revitalization. And we've seen the capacity of the American people with a population of well over 300 million. It's a big country with a lot of potential there, and it still is the world's largest economy, rivaled now by China. But we're not dead in the water. And I don't want it to fail. There's a lot of talk. This is the other thing about the economy. Economies are built on confidence. Confidence of people in their systems, confidence of people in their dollar, in their banking system, and so on. The reason you hear so much negative talk about the economy, and I talk about the negative aspects of it myself a lot, okay, because of inflation in particular. But some people really throw a lot of fuel on that fire to fan the flames because they want to undermine confidence in the economy, especially foreign countries, where they'll really amplify negative messages about the U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar because they're trying to undermine confidence in it, so that people, if people lose enough confidence in the dollar, they'll start dumping their dollars. If they don't believe in their bank, if they think their banks are not secure, they'll run to the bank and pull all their money out and start a run on the bank, and that can cause a collapse. If they don't believe that the value of their investments in stocks are not secure because they think that companies are about to fail, they'll start selling off their stocks, and it can cause a stock market crash. That's why you get so much negative stuff even coming from outside influences. It's an attempt to undermine the economy by attacking public confidence through public information campaigns, propaganda, information warfare.
Exactly. And to answer some other guy's question, probably about our how this defense that we got into. Well, look, let's go back to World War II. Okay, what happened in Pearl Harbor? Right, Pearl Harbor was attacked at some point by the kamikaze, as we all know. All right. So what happened is that the U.S. Government has decided that the doctrine that they had was wrong. So they have decided to change the doctrine. And that doctrine became what we had later, the police of the world, because of actually what was happening right there. And they were being attacked by communists. And remember that this is where the US has decided to, put down the communist parties around the world, if you will. So, and this is where the marine defense has become pretty intense, because I can tell you, the naval of the US back in, say, from 1941 to 43 has became pretty intense. Okay, they have built a lot of shit and they have contributed in a lot of naval battle. And not only that, but the naval American Navy was actually the force, if you will, of the American, and this is what became the police of the world, if you will, because on land you cannot go everywhere, but on the water you can get access to all the world. So this is how the U.S. government was thinking of that, residing a lot of bases everywhere in the world. And not only that, but the Navy was part of this police. So remember that, guys.
Joe says we don't need to be the police of the world. Well, in NATO polices itself. That's sort of the point. It's not just the United States policing. It's the NATO countries. It's the West, and it is the United Nations, which is actually, I think, that's part of the problem that we're dealing with, is that the United Nations is collectivist in its approach to the world too. But that's not really in itself. That's not really like a NATO thing. NATO is a separate deal altogether. But the United States does not dictate. I mean, it certainly other the influence in Europe of the United States is massive, obviously, because these European states rely on the United States for security now, right? But they also contribute, and they're part of it. And they are sovereign countries unto themselves. The United States does not dictate to Britain. The United States doesn't dictate to France. But we certainly do provide protection.
Yeah. And I mean, this is why we also are culturally a lot of westernized country. That's because there's a lot of Western culture, if you will, being supported in other country. And I mean, economically speaking, I mean, they want to have Coca-Cola and stuff around like that. They want to have some McDonald's branches around, and that's totally okay, but this is not what I would call colonialism. It's more like capitalism. So do not fall for that one too.
Joe says it's 90% the United States. Joe, what do you think is going to happen if there's no more NATO? If NATO falls, do you know what's going to happen? Like,
one thing I will say,
you're going to miss everything you have.
Human right goes to trash from the moment that NATO falls.
It's not just that. It's everything. Everything that you have everything that the West is, it's gone. NATO goes away, the West goes away, the United States will cease to exist. The economy will be gone, you'll be living in poverty, the Western countries will be plunged into poverty, you'll see a depression like that makes the 1930s look like prosperity. Okay, that's what will come, because the dollar will be gone. The US dollar will no longer be the world reserve currency. There won't probably be a US dollar. There probably won't be a United States. There won't be a West. Everything will be fragmented. It's hard to say where things will actually end up, but all these countries will be split up. Some will go this way, some will go that way, some will become communist, some will become fascist. So who knows? But it will be hugely disruptive to the point of it will plunge people into despair. Everything here, everything, you will own nothing and you will not be happy. And freedom, as you've come to take for granted, all of us have taken for granted, will be gone. This is the last place on earth where we have what I would say is a society based on liberty and freedom. No other country in the world. And if you're going to miss it when it's gone, man. And people here are calling for the destruction. That, you know, people are like, let's tear it all down. I don't want to tear it down. We have some problems. I say, let's fix it. Other people are like, no, it's got to go. We need a whole new system. Yeah? Really? Well, go hang out with the people violating everyone's rights out on the university campuses then, because that's where you belong, if that's what you think. But I'm not there. I'm all about individual rights and freedoms, freedom, liberty, justice, rule of law. And you know, the way we're coming under attack is because this identity politics that until the last number of months, people on the freedom side have been really opposed to. They don't like identity politics, and now suddenly they're embracing it without realizing they're embracing it. But it's all based on irrationality, because liberty, individual rights, Western society has been really based on rational political discourse, rational political thought, rationality, and realism. It's recognizing that certain things are real and analyzing things from a rational point of view based on constitutionality, on constitutional law. That's what it is based on. All of the authority from that coming from the people. What right now we're seeing is this, where people are being duped into supporting this collectivist, anti-American, anti-imperialist, anti-colonial political ideology. It's irrational, where people are being told, because it's this postmodern political approach to things where people are being told you can be what you want to be. Everything is a construct. You can identify as a man or as a woman. Your country doesn't really exist. It's not a real thing. It's just a corporation, which is code for it's a capitalist society that we need to tear down. It's corporate. It's corporate/capitalist. This is what they're selling people. Because it's just a corporation. It's not a real country. It's not a real thing. They don't have any authority. So it's fine to oppose it. They don't have any authority over you. It's anti-corporatism, anti-capitalism, anti-American. It's anti-you. It's anti-individualism, anti-property rights. And people are embracing it because they don't understand the language and they don't understand what they're really selling you. And they don't really tell you. And people might think that I'm shifting my position and you used to talk more like a freedom fighter. No, my position has been very consistent. You can go back and check like 2 years ago when I was opposed to these unity flags that were being flown around. And I kept saying, well, what does that mean? What do you mean by unity? Why are you flying a unity flag if you're all about freedom? Unity can be fine, but what are you uniting behind? And I was never able to get an answer out of the people who were promoting this idea of unity. Well, we just need unity. What does that mean? They don't want to tell you. Do you know why they don't want to tell you? Because it's collectivism. And they don't want to admit that. It's communism. When they say unity, they mean communism.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So
and there's no freedom in that.
Changed.
What's that?
It's another word changed.
Which is what the people on the progressive left do all the time. They play word games with pronouns, the he, she, I'm, the, it, what, do. I don't even understand it. They just manipulate the words. They change Jew to Zionist. They change capitalism to corporate. It's all code. You have to learn the lingo if you're going to be part of the progressive left. And as you're indoctrinated into it, what happens is you don't understand the language. They're selling you something that you don't fully understand because you don't understand that they're selling you this idea in code, and it sounds very virtuous. Sounds like it's the kind of, they appeal to people on an emotional level and exploit people with a heart. But then in the end, once you're kind of indoctrinated into it, then they kind of reveal their hand. But by that time, it's too late because they've torn everything down and they've taken everything over.
And was Elon on the podcast that we were showing earlier that was saying that most of those students doesn't know much of what they are chanting around and what they are saying.
Oh, see, there we go. So we're making some progress. Joe, see? Unity is globalism, right?
Exactly.
So you see how this convergence happens? Isn't that weird? How suddenly, like, I agree. Yeah, unity is globalism. I would say unity can work depending on what you're uniting behind. You could unite behind a particular cause. And I would very much encourage people to get unified behind a cause of individual rights and freedoms, constitutionality. I would encourage people to do that. You can be unified and work toward a common goal. But if the overall goal is just unity, that's collectivism. And that, in my view, is very dangerous because we've seen through history that ultimately it just doesn't work. It, by its very nature, it is authoritarian. It is coercive. Because the only way to make a collectivist society work is through coercion. If you're going to take someone's property and redistribute it to affect equity and equal outcomes, you can only do that through coercive manners, through confiscation. They have to take it from someone and then give it to others. So automatically, you're using force against people with the threat of either incarceration or worse. It's at the tip of a gun with handcuffs. Is if you don't comply, you're going to pay a price. Hand over your property. That's what it is. That's taxation. People will put up with that to a certain degree because in exchange for taxation, they expect representation and service from government. But when it goes beyond that, people begin to lose tolerance for it. And that's when it becomes dangerous. And that's where we're actually at. That, if you really drill down into it, these are the reasons we see the protests set on the streets. These are the reasons we see the disruption in our society, because things are out of balance already. And the people who are doing this to us are blaming free markets, capitalism. They're blaming individual rights and freedoms. They're telling us all that the reason that the pandemic was a problem was because it was a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Mm-hmm. When in fact that wasn't the case at all. It was they lie and blame the problems that they create on other people, on particular groups and use them as scapegoats, whether it's the unvaccinated or the Jews or, you pick your group. But they'll pick it. And once they're done with that group, they move on to the next group. And if you think that you're immune, think again, because they'll come for you eventually when they run out of whoever it is that they're picking on at the time, because they're a bunch of authoritarian bullies. As you've seen on the campuses, when you show up and they say, you're not coming in here and we're not even going to talk to you because we don't like you. We don't like your politics. We don't like your skin color. We don't like something about you. We don't like the way you look at us. We don't like what you say, what you think, or we don't like something about you. So you don't get to come in.
Or I don't have a real journalist pass.
Right, or whatever they say,
the
right?
thing that they had said
Says
2 days
who?
ago.
And then they sit there and say, well, we got to get rid of NATO. We got to get rid of the West. They're the oppressors. I don't think so. I think we're looking at the oppressors right there. This is the problem. In my view, this is where the real problem lies today. And we've forgotten what our roots are. We've allowed them to take it away from us. And we need to get it back. That's the solution, ultimately, in my view. It's not communism, and it's not fascism. It's not, the solution is certainly not rooted in hatred or bigotry or scapegoating or anti-Semitism or anti-Islamism, right? It's in opposing the radical forms of these political ideologies. It's about not going to the extremes. It's about getting back to our roots, the things that we predicated, what we built this country, Canada, what we built the United States, what we built the West on from the very beginning. Rational thought, liberty, freedom, not communism, not fascism, freedom. Real freedom, not like fake freedom from communists where they put people out into a field with, AK-47s and say, you're a freedom fighter now, when you're actually fighting for collectivism, which is not about your freedom as an individual whatsoever. It's about capitulation. It's about giving away your freedom as an individual for the collective, for the greater good. I'll die for the collective. No, that's not freedom. That's indoctrination. That's communism, and it doesn't work. It results in a lot of death.
So I'll go on the street, look at the pro-Palestinian and get killed and become a martyr.
What's Choosy saying? They really don't want us to talk about Lahaina and Josh Green as Knights of Lahaina, Choosy, Lahaina was a psyop, man. I'll put the challenge out there again. Anybody, and all this time, not one person has been able to produce the family of even one child that, the thousands of children that went missing because of the wildfires in Lahaina. No, because it didn't happen. Not that way. The fires happened, but the children that were kidnapped and blah, 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 all the missing kids, go find me a relative. Find me anybody. There should be lots of them. Get me one. No, I know exactly what that was. That was a giant psyop.
I was about to say a psyop.
Not to see, and not to diminish the tragedy of the wildfires itself, but there's what really happened, and then there's all this propaganda crap that was put out there to scare people and radicalize people. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And I talked about it on this program, and my challenge is still out there. Get me an uncle, an aunt, a brother, a sister. Get me somebody. Get me some of these families. Where are the posters for all these missing children? Where's the campaigns to get them all back? Thousands of missing children. No, they found the missing children. I showed you that. Anyway, you proved me wrong by giving me some breathing, living human beings who are real, talking about how they're trying to get find their kids. If my kid went missing because there was I don't care what the circumstances might be, but if my child had gone missing ever, I would go to the ends of the earth to get my kid back. And I'd be shouting it from the mountaintops. I'd be on every live stream, every podcast, every television channel, every radio station, and every newspaper, constantly putting the word out, spreading the pictures of my missing child all over the place. And it's just not happening. It's for the thousands of missing kids, they're awfully darn quiet because you know why? Because that whole thing with the Jewish space lasers and all that crapola, it just didn't happen that way. And the kids, no, not a true story. But that's a sidebar. And I sent someone to Hawaii and I had them look around. They were going to Hawaii and I asked them to look around, find me someone. They couldn't. I did send someone to Hawaii. I told you that. Didn't happen. The fires happened. The fire in that community happened, yes. But they couldn't find anyone to talk about the missing kids that were supposedly taken down into the Jewish tunnels. Didn't happen. It's a lie. I'm sorry to tell you, it's blowing up your heads, but that's the truth. Anyway, let's move on from that. That's in the past. Take a trip down there yourself. Right? You won't find it because it was all a bunch of bunk. It was all created online.
So you know what, guys? Some meditation, go back inside yourself and find the truth. It's out there. You just have to find it.
Choosy, he says, just because you sent somebody and they couldn't find anything doesn't mean that weird shit didn't happen and there's a timeline of weird shit happen. Yep, Choosy, a lot of the weird shit was all the weird crap that was created online. My friend, it was a psyop. Artificial intelligence was used to create videos, to create memes, to create a whole information campaign designed to just screw with people's heads. And a bunch of it too was designed to generate a lot of donations, people contributing money. There was a guy with a real estate channel thingy down there that flipped it around, and he was an opportunist who used it to generate a ton of money that people donated. I'm telling you, man. That's the weird stuff that happened. Yeah, there was weird stuff, but it was a fabrication.
Or was he speaking with a British accent?
I think one guy was, yeah.
Yeah, I was following him for a time, and he was saying a few things about banks being bankrupt, but things were not always happening as he was saying. So
anyway, Choosy, we can talk about it another night. We've got, we're on another subject here. But if you want to exile the Knights of Malta, and I do too, we need to make sure we're targeting the right knights, the evil knights of Malta. And some of them are embedded within our own government right now because they are under the influence of foreign governments. And we're seeing that with these CSIS reports here in Canada, with the public inquiries into that. We're seeing the results of that, and it's a serious, serious issue. We need to get to the bottom of that. Those are the Knights of Malta that we need to exile. We need to find out who the traitors are and purge them from our system, not tear the whole system down. If we tear this system down, everything will fall. That's what they want. That's what our adversaries want. They want us to destroy ourselves, and they're getting a lot of people to work in that way.
So I would argue with Rick to say that there's probably a new Knight of Malta on the rise. Be careful not to adhere. It's lurky, I know.
Raging Against the Machine says this government is bought and paid for. Well, we need to purge the Liberal government, that is for sure. And yes, some of these politicians, some, not all, some of the politicians are bought and paid for. No question about it. Absolutely. And I don't know how many. I don't know how deep it goes, but we have to get to the bottom of it. The thing is, our system is set up to self-correct. And we're beginning to see that self-correction take form because we do have this public inquiry. We are seeing these investigations. This information is beginning to come out. It is being rooted out. We have an opportunity to purge the system of this cancer. That's what we need to do. That's the solution. It's not to tear everything down.
Yeah. It's kind of a bit of an inside without being from the inside. It's lurky.
Chuzy says it's not up to us to prove who are the good or the bad Knights of Malta if there are any actual good ones. That needs to be demonstrated by the proper authority that we should ask for. Fair enough. I mean, we can again, we can talk about this more another night. Anyway, where were we? Let's take a little break here. I'll regroup with my thoughts because we kind of got sidetracked there. And we'll come back and continue the discussion. The thing is, I'm sure that everybody here has the same desire, the same objective, and that is to get back to a place of actual freedom. We're as close to it as we can, or at least closer, right? The way it used to be. We need to get our country back. We need to get our freedom back. Isn't that what it's all about around here? I think so.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now, at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program. For your mind.
Okay, I'm back and Dragon's off taking a little bit of a break and we can continue our conversation here. You know, there's another aspect to this too, and I wanted to talk about this the other night. It's about these masks. You know, during the pandemic, I think we were largely conditioned to start wearing them. And, well, I know we were conditioned to start wearing them, but it's been a problem. And I think these masks, and I'm sure Dragon will have something to share with this when he gets back to join us, and I see him arriving again. There he is. So I'm just talking about these masks, Dragon, and masks during the pandemic. Everybody kind of conditioned to see them as being something normal and desirable, right? But what we've been seeing during these protests is the use of masks to hide identity during the commission of crimes, acts of vandalism, as we saw at McGill. Was it last night?
2 nights ago.
2 nights ago?
Yeah.
Smashed windows, protesters going through the streets. When we see them, and this has been the case in the United States in many cases, where monuments have been defaced. The perpetrators of these crimes are wearing masks. We need, in my opinion, this is one of the solutions that I've come up with to a lot of our problems with these violent acts in the streets and even online. I think we need legislation, laws. Well, we need to begin enforcing masking laws, like no masks allowed in the commission of crimes or illegal protests. These laws are already on the books. They're just not being enforced. In fact, in Canada, I believe that the penalty for committing a crime when participating in an illegal protest, the penalty can be up to 5 years to 10 years in jail, depending on the circumstances surrounding the act. Now you see, if you're protesting and you're peaceful, there's no crime being committed. But if you're protesting and you begin vandalizing and smashing, which are in themselves violent acts aimed at intimidating people through an act of violent vandalism, I say throw the book at the people. This is unacceptable in our society. In a society where we do have open discourse, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, to abuse the process that way because you're not getting what you want and you resort to intimidation tactics, I say throw the book at them. If you're going to vandalize and intimidate that way and you're wearing a mask, the law says you're going to jail. The reason they wear the mask is so that they can commit the crime without getting caught.
Yeah.
And you take the masks away, you'll cut the crime. This is not acceptable. So people could wear masks for religious purposes, but you wear a mask in the commission of an offense and you get caught, I say put them in jail.
Yeah, should be a law against you're protesting for something, you don't wear a mask at all.
Well,
so
you
it
commit
will,
a crime. If you commit a crime, you go into a store, you rob somebody wearing a mask to conceal your identity, you pay a higher price for wearing that mask. And you'll see crime will be cut. It'll be cut considerably. People will think twice if they know that there are security cameras around and their face is exposed. They're not going to do it. You put the mask on, that enables them to do it. No, it's not acceptable. The other thing we can do, I've thought about this quite a bit, and it's not a fully formed idea, but it's the beginning of a discussion. We need, I think, to address problems with information, propaganda, disinformation online. The way to deal with it is to take away anonymity online. If you're online on social media and you're posting information, if you're pretending to be someone you're not, and you're engaged in any kind of activity like that, people deserve to know who it is that they're dealing with. If people have to disclose who they are when they're online to other people that they're engaging with, it would reduce crime again. It would protect children from online predators who pose as people that they're not. It would protect the public from bad actors and even foreign governments who put up fake websites and misrepresent themselves in order to distribute damaging information. Again, I haven't fully thought this through, and it needs more thought to make sure that if anything like that, any legislation is passed in that way, that it doesn't have unintended consequences. But I think it's the beginning of a larger discussion, and I think that is a way to deal with a lot of the problems we're having with information warfare and disinformation, and even what we were just talking about a short time ago here. What do you think?
well, it's kind of an interesting idea because now I'm asking myself, who in, the panel or, on the chat does believe in the rising dragon? Are you believing in the guy who says the thing, or do you believe in, well, I wouldn't say the name because the name is totally anonymous in a way, but nobody's really know my real name. By the way, the name is Ian. But the thing is that, people is not always aware of the guy in front of them, but they have known the guy for a while. So probably there's a temple there. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because probably other people that doesn't know the Mavericks that might look into a dragon guy speaking on the internet might probably not be interested into looking into it because of this name, just because probably of ideology or probably religion thing. I mean, look, I've been hearing a lot of people calling me probably a demon because I was using a name that is supposedly, say, anti-Christianism because Satan, dragon, blah, blah, blah. And so, I mean, you can do the link between yourself. But the thing is that it's not a thing to me. I mean, I'm not using that for that representative. But the thing is that it's interesting to see if people kind of look forward into that or doesn't look into what I'm doing because of a name.
Joe
That's
says that would silence people. I would say the only people that it would silence is people who want to say things that aren't true or say things that are inflammatory. That, you know, if you're not willing to stand behind something you say and let people know that you're saying it, then then how much value does it have anyway? If you need to remain anonymous when you say something, then maybe it doesn't hold as much weight as it should. Maybe it's not credible. Maybe it's not valid. I can understand in certain circumstances as a journalist where someone might need to conceal their identity because if they say something and it might put them in danger because they're revealing information that exposes a crime, for instance, exposes a corrupt politician maybe, and they don't want to reveal their identity because of that. I can understand that, but there are provisions that can be made for the distribution of that information through a journalist who can say a source, an unnamed source, tells me this, but then that journalist then becomes the face of that information. And that journalist needs to make sure that the information they are providing is credible and truthful. And they are then staking their reputation on backing up that statement by saying, yes, I believe this person is being truthful and credible. And it's that journalist's reputation as a credible source of information that then provides the basis for putting it out there in the public. But beyond that, I can't think of too many other, at least off the top of my head, any other negative repercussions for making sure that people are truthful about who they are when they're online and presenting themselves in a public forum. Why wouldn't you want to let people know who you are unless you have something to hide?
That's true. But in a way, I will believe also that nowadays, in a information war era that we are living in, depends on what you're tackling. And probably it's a good thing to have a certain anonymous because, for example, what I'm doing right now with the pro-Palestinian encampments, some probably in that encampment might be angry at me or wouldn't like what I say or what I try to prove to people in a way. Not that I'm trying to prove something, but the proof that I'm providing to the people with my camera and with myself is probably for them justifiable to do something wrong to me. And this is probably why I also like to keep a certain anonymous thing behind myself. It's a sort of a security control because I don't have anyone to protect myself when I go out, only my kung fu, which I'm not a master of. But for example, I'm just alone by myself. So yeah, it's important, I think, for me to keep a certain.
You want to address this on the screen there?
Yeah. Are you ashamed of using your real name now that you're a Rick Go to Montreal correspondent? Same goes with Laurie Spencer. No, I wouldn't say that I'm ashamed. Dragon stand for a ideology. Basically,
It's a brand, is what it's
it's a
become.
brand
It's a
also, but
but you don't fake your name. You know, people know who you are. What's your
yeah,
name?
yeah. My name is Ian Leonard. Thanks
There you go.
I mean, I'm there. I'm really there as a. But I mean, on Facebook, you might find me on Ian Vizo, which is my father name. So yeah, this is a little memorial to my father because, well, he's passed away a long time ago, but my father always been behind me in a way. So yeah, spiritually, he's always around. So.
Right. And I don't speak for Laurie Spencer, so you can ask Laurie Spencer any questions about that you want, but take it to her.
But why would I be ashamed? No, dragon actually stand for a thing. If you go into the Oriental mentality or ideology, um, well, it stands for force of nature. It's a force of spirituality, and also, a dragon wouldn't attack just because, right? A dragon is I will call that the measurement of wiseness of one person. So, it represents wiseness.
Joe's asking me if I think censorship is good. Generally speaking, no. I'm not in favor of censorship. I'm in favor of free speech. But I'm not in favor of malicious speech. I'm not in favor of people who just are provocateurs. I'm not in favor of somebody standing up in a theater and who just starts shouting to be disruptive. I'm not in favor of that. But I am in favor of giving people opportunity to express valid opinions and engage in public discourse and express a variety of views, as long as everybody gets to engage in that. People who, there's no serious discussion about free speech unless you're also talking, though, about where the limits of free speech need to be, because you can't have true free speech without making sure that everyone's right to free speech as individuals is protected. If you allow people just to say whatever they want, that may not be productive or helpful to society, because I don't think that it is helpful to society to let people just lie on purpose in order to affect a negative outcome. It's not false advertising, for instance, is a good example of that. If you misrepresent a product and tell somebody that it is safe, I think that should be potentially a crime when it's not. If you're selling somebody an unsafe product and you're advertising it and saying this is completely safe, but it's something that will actually kill you, I think that should potentially be a crime, a speech crime, right? So I don't believe in, just total freedom of say whatever you want, express opinions, yes. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there have to be some limits to what people are allowed to say. Otherwise, you're potentially putting the public at risk, putting other people's rights at risk.
My mom used to say, always be equilibrate, use the equilibrium around you. Okay. You can be on one side, you can be on the other side, but you always need to be on the middle just to make sure that you don't stumble too much on the other guy, be on your line.
Yeah. Well, Joe says the problem is who decides what is malicious. It is indeed a difficult thing to navigate, right? And I think that's why our society largely has worked in the past, not as much, so much these days, because speech is being restricted more and more, both directly and indirectly, using legislation and non-legislative means to do that. But, I think our society has largely worked because we go out of our way, generally speaking, to make sure that people's free speech rights are protected in our society. And we're seeing that even on campuses right now. I would argue that even as these protesters commit certain offenses, bylaw offenses, break other laws where they're occupying space illegally in the commission of their protest, it becomes kind of a gray area. They are sort of breaking the law, but we still allow them to stay there because we want to make sure that we don't violate their right to free speech or right to protest or right to freedom of expression. So we tolerate it even beyond a point where laws are being broken because their right to free speech and freedom of expression trumps the need to enforce certain laws at certain levels. And so that's why our society generally does work. But then at a certain point, these things, you have to find the right balance. And that's where after 3 months of a protest on the front lawn of a university campus where other people's rights are being violated, freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, like, you can't come in here, we're not going to let you, these kinds of things. Finding the balance, it's a difficult thing. But generally speaking, I think we do err on the side of protecting freedom of speech.
Yeah.
But yeah, a difficult thing to navigate.
In about 3 weeks from now. On the McGill campus.
Steve says it's really simple why so many are acting crazy. They're debased from a reality by associations to other ones who are all so debased. I don't know. I don't quite sure.
Yeah, me neither. I gotta probably think about this one.
Quite the opposite, Joe. He says, I want to empower people to empower those that want tyranny. No. I want to protect people's rights to free speech. I'm all about free speech, and I just explained myself. Now, if you're taking from that I'm in favor of tyranny, no. If you think that free speech has to be in like total, that people can say anything they want, anywhere they want, anyhow they want, it doesn't work in a free society. Because we've experienced that even here in the chat, where some people, or in the call-in show, where they call in to sabotage the call-in portion of the program. It doesn't work. There has to be they have to have some limits in order to make sure that everybody has a voice, so that one person doesn't get to drown out all the other people, so that some people aren't misled. If say there's a certain medical product that they want to say inject into people's arms, I think that there has to be an obligation on the part of the provider of that medication to provide real information. And if the information they provide is not factual, then they should be held accountable for misleading people. Does that sound like I'm in favor of tyranny? Quite the opposite. If people are willing to lie about a certain product in order to get people to take it, then they should be held accountable for having lied about it. If I'm putting out a hypothetical.
It's like a doctor, when they give you a certain medicine, they have to tell you the risk and the good risk of taking that medicine. Or, for example, you get a cancer for a reason. Well, they're going to tell you got that medicine, you got that option or that option. You got 3 options, for example, and those 3 options you got probably, you got to look into the pro and cons of every situation here. And I mean, if the doctor doesn't tell you the right information right there, Rick will tell you right here. They are reliable of having some issues with someone who has not been provided the right options here.
Yeah.
And same goes to us.
See, and if you have laws that say you're not allowed to lie to people, right? In order to, and if your lies are put out there to hurt people, to get people to do something that's not safe, you'll that'll be a big deterrent to having people do those kinds of things.
It's like, for example, let's go hypothetical for a moment. All right, say that.
No, you know what, GTO? I'm not misrepresenting anything. It has zero to do with this. It has everything to do with the topic, because it's not just straight up like paid advertising. You think advertising is only what, a commercial on television? No. Promotion, advertising comes in a lot of different forms. You think that politicians aren't selling you something? Even if if you had these kinds of laws, even politicians would be held to a higher standard if you had laws like that in place, where you can't knowingly mislead people with fake information in order to get a negative outcome. Again, this is the formation of a larger discussion that I think needs to happen, because we're dealing with new technology, a new information medium in the form of the internet and artificial intelligence. There's a perfect example, actually, artificial intelligence. You can create videos, images that are so realistic now that you can create an entire alternate reality online to mislead people. But if you're doing that, should that be legal, especially if it's leading people to a place of harm? You can disrupt an election and undermine democracy using this new technology. We know it's a threat. Should that then not be illegal? Should it not be illegal in our system to allow foreign governments to use that technology to undermine democracy? Should we not thwart that? That is a form of speech. Should we let that reign free on the internet so that it undermines our democracy? No, we don't want it to undermine our democracy. We need to protect our democracy from that. I would say we need to find a way. Any other thoughts? Let me go over to Rumble and see what people are saying over there.
Let's say theoretically, okay? You know what? I like Hitler, what he did. For example, okay, I'm just going on a hypothetical world right here, okay? I like what Hitler did in 1940s, and what he did to the Jew, blah blah, and so on. I mean, I'm not saying that I would advocate for more Jews to be killed right now, but I did like what he did. This is free speech. But till I'm saying that I would like to see something more coming like what happened back then. Oh, now you're infringing that little line where your free speech is okay, but now you're in kind of implicating probably something wrong here. Well, yeah.
Well, the other thing about accuracy and information, we're going to run into a problem even 5 or 10 years from now, maybe even next year, because artificial intelligence is, the use of it, the effectiveness of it is expanding at an exponential rate. Artificial intelligence uses all the collection of information, the information collective online, in order to form its answers to things. And it uses that information collectively to create things. Everything it does is based on the data sets that are out there in the Internet of Things.
Yeah.
If the information that is out there is not factual, if it's not real, then artificial intelligence will begin to give us a false reality in the future. It will lead us to a place that is fake. If we allow the proliferation of information online that is malicious, if it's designed to undermine the very fabric of our society, undermine democracy, undermine freedom, if we allow that kind of information to expand and infect the system, infect the Internet of Things, infect the mind of artificial intelligence, our AI will begin to give us crazy results that ultimately might even destroy our society, maybe even destroy us. Maybe that's what will ultimately result in AI killing off humanity, is our own disinformation. This is stuff we really need to be aware of, start to think about now before it's too late.
Yeah, you've tackled the right point there. I mean, it can tips around there anytime soon, just because the way that we kind of the way that we, do ourselves favors or being bad to each other, right? I mean, the way that we treat ourselves is not the right ways right now, and people have not should come back probably to a few human sources instead of the new reality.
Over on Rumble, we've got Al Matched saying, Rick, there is no way to control the WWW. It's too late. We deal with the decisions of the fact checkers now. The fact checkers, they're a problem too. You see, but there's a perfect example. The fact checkers look at information from a particular perspective, through a particular lens. And these days, most of them are woke. Most of them are younger, and they're coming from an education system that is progressive, based on identity politics, generally speaking, left wing. And so when they're banning people, censoring people, these decisions are based on a political perspective that comes from there. That already is a problem. And those are human beings. And we're seeing even the automated systems in Google and Facebook shut people down, censor people, ban people like me permanently on Facebook for using automated systems that are already based on, he's quite right, we've already kind of lost control of the World Wide Web in that regard, because these decisions are based on, I would say, distorted political ideologies that have rejected the things that Western society, free society, was built on: liberty and freedom. It's rejected those things. It's even rejected reality in favor of irrationality. Identity politics, you can identify as anything you want, and nothing from before is real. You can create your own reality, not just online, but in the real world as well.
I identify myself as a dragon, and my pronouns is something you can tell. But you know what? Don't call me late for supper, please.
Yeah. So in any event, this kind of gets us to a later time in the evening. Let me just see here. Rage In Against the Machine says reality has been inverted. I would agree with that.
Yes, it is.
And I think the final inversion, or the final the inversion was completed, I would say, during the pandemic, and the world was literally turned upside down. Now they're going in for the kill, and they're trying to tear our society down.
Yeah, because like I would say, and it came from another podcast that I've been listening to, but the guy had a good idea behind that. Okay, take our population or a society, whether you're Canadian, US, whatever the country you're in, all right? Put that into a pie, right? You're gonna cut the pie in many pieces, in many ways that you want, all right? But those pieces doesn't belong to any one pieces. If, for example, you belong to that trench of people that is not vaccinated, okay, sure, all the unvaccinated people will be with each other, and the vaccinated will be branded to be around each other. But then, who's of them and who's of us, who's pro-Palestinian, non-pro-Palestinian, this is going to divide more of those people. And now you got the division with, the Freedom Convoy or whatever else. So take all those many ideology and say the political individuality or the political structure that is now being implemented in all those questions. Now we're not even belonging in one little piece of the pie. We're all scrambled all anyway. So basically, we're just divided in so many pieces that you cannot belong anywhere. And this is how they win. Divide to conquer.
They do use issues as wedges, and they do use divide and conquer tactics. No
Wedge.
question about it.
Yeah, the wedge issues is always the best way to, create and foment discourse between a population and make sure that nobody get along because, you might be agreeing with me on certain thing, but the other thing you don't agree with me is making us dividing to each other. So
Now, okay, so we need to shift gears here a little bit because I need to get a couple of things in before we wrap up for the night. And there's still a little bit. We still have a little ground to cover, because the two lead stories that are out there tonight that have been promoted in our thumbnails and headlines are the JFK Jr., John F. Kennedy Jr. plane crash death mystery has been solved, according to a new report. So want to share that with you. But also the one headline said Hamas is losing support. And that is a story about a poll that has come out. So I at least need to make mention of this because I did headline this tonight. And there is a poll that was taken. And it indicates that, and this is, open for discussion, and maybe we won't get to discuss it here tonight, but, you can discuss amongst yourselves, or maybe we'll discuss a little bit. But what's the deal? So here, I'll show you. Here's a report out of NBC. It says Hamas losing support, losing the backing of ordinary people in Gaza. We're paying the human price of its war. So that's what they're reporting. Hamas popularity among the populace who are actually living now in shelters, in tents, and makeshift, communities is declining, one pollster told NBC News. So they are polling the residents in Gaza. It says, according to this poll, only about a fifth of the people in the enclave support those attacks. Hamas's popularity in the enclave has sunk considerably in the months since the October 7th attacks on Israel that saw 1,200 people killed and resulted in around 250 taken hostage. It says only about 1/5 of people in the enclave support those attacks, down from nearly half in November, according to polling conducted in May by the West Bank-based Arab World for Research and Development, an independent organization that conducted 1,500 personal surveys across the Palestinian territories. The poll also showed that Hamas only had the support of about a quarter of residents in the enclave, where the death toll since October 7th passed 38,000 this week, according to Palestinian health officials. So what they're saying, what the poll seems to indicate, is that support for Hamas is declining because they're seeing that the attack on October 7th and specifically support for the attack on October 7th among Gaza residents is declining because they're seeing that it has resulted in this response from Israel, which has been, very deadly and destructive, obviously with many, many children and thousands of people being killed. And so just throw that out there. That's what that headline was about. And that's the result of that poll. So take it for what it's worth. And again, right there, you're seeing, though, the oppressed versus the oppressor political dynamics and arguments being played out. That's a whole other discussion, and we can go on and on about that. But I needed to touch on it because it was in the headlines tonight. So now the other story, Dragon, are you familiar at all? Are you old? How old are you?
43 years old.
So do you remember when John F. Kennedy Jr. was killed in the plane crash?
Nope, but I'm a history verse kind of guy, and I was more into the good old GFK, which we all know how he's been killed into his motor car. But no, for this one is one of those I need to do more research, to be quite honest.
Yeah, speaking of JFK and the assassination of JFK, I've been like up close. I've touched the car that JFK was riding in when he was assassinated, the limousine.
Mm-hmm.
It was at the Henry Ford Museum, and I went over there many years ago, to do a story for television on it and for my automotive show. So we had that on our program long time ago. Yeah, I have to tell you, it was a strange experience just seeing it sitting there. But
wow.
Anyway, but this story coming out of the National Examiner, and I think this is something that needs the TrueSpiracies treatment. Here we go. Okay, so this is now TrueSpiracies. We're not in the regular news mode, okay? Because around here, during the TrueSpiracies segments, we give you news that is so real, it's unbelievable. What is the date today? It's the 7th. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I have gone into the future, and I have come back to the present to bring you next week's news today. This National Examiner dated, and I can prove it, dated June 8th. What's the date today? June 7th. This is next week's edition, but I have it in my hot little hands because I went into the future and got myself a copy of the National Examiner, not the Inquirer, the Examiner, which has on its cover tonight, JFK crash mystery solved. They've solved it. They have the truth. Revealed. FBI buried truth for 25 years. But now, excuse me, they have solved the mystery. So when I saw this, when I went ahead in time, I thought, oh, gotta have that one. If they've solved it, we got to get the truth out. So I got myself a copy of next week's edition of the National Examiner. Here it is, revealed. JFK Jr.'s tragic plane crash, no accident. Explosive new details on the 25th anniversary reveal and FBI cover-up. Are you intrigued, Dragon?
I am.
Try to contain yourself. I know it's exciting to get the truth, but please. So what's this about? Of course, John F. Kennedy Jr. was the publisher of George Magazine, created that, which continues today. But shall I read the highlighted information here?
You shall.
It says, in a sensational twist that reads like a Hollywood thriller, insiders, who shall remain nameless, now claim that the tragic 1999 plane crash that claimed the life of John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife Carolyn Bessette, and her sister Lauren was no accident, which would suggest that foul play might have been involved. In fact, evidence suggests a chilling cover-up, orchestrated at the highest levels of the U.S. government. Dun, 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 dun. For years, authorities blamed pilot error for the July 16th, 1999 crash. But recently, unearthed documents reveal the FBI initially treated the incident as a murder investigation. The shocking findings suggest a bomb may have been planted on Kennedy's Piper Saratoga, or that the aircraft was taken down by a weapon fired from a boat. But shortly after the sinister theories surfaced, the probe was suddenly and mysteriously shut down. Dun, 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 dun. Are you intrigued?
I am.
Do you want more?
I do.
Wayne Madsen, a former consultant for the National Security Agency, that would be the NSA, who was hired by the George Magazine editor to seek answers regarding the tragic 1963 assassination of his father in Dallas, says he and his investigative team knew, all in capital letters, KNEW, the hunky magazine publisher was a victim of foul play, and his demise was linked to his father's untimely death. Dun, 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 dun. Are you still intrigued?
I am, but there's a lot of connection going on now.
Try to contain yourself. Calm down. Quote, we were all prepared to go down to the offices of George Magazine and meet with JFK Jr. to discuss the plan, says Madsen, who is calling for a new investigation into his death. Quote, he wanted to find out who killed his father, and money was really no object. After I heard he died, I just got a bad feeling and thought, they got him. At the time, I was told the FBI originally treated it as a murder investigation or possible murder, and then the NTSB, which is short form for National Transportation Safety Board, moved in, and that was the end of that. It became an accident investigation. It would be interesting to find out who issued that order. Dun, 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 dun.
Who did?
I don't know who did. Are you still intrigued? I can tell you as an experienced journalist what's really going on here, but I will save my analysis until the end. Are you still intrigued? Shall we continue? Kennedy and his wife. Stop it! You're too excited. Calm down. Kennedy and his, because I know you want to know how they solved the mystery. They've solved it. This is truth. Kennedy and his wife were heading to a cousin's wedding on Cape Cod from New Jersey and planned to drop off her sister in Martha's Vineyard when the plane he was piloting crashed into the ocean while approaching the tiny airport. The FBI was on the hunt for suspicious individuals seen lurking around Kennedy's plane at New Jersey's Essex County Airport before he took off, and even tracked suspicious boating activity. That's pretty suspicious boat over there. in the area where the plane made its final approach to Martha's Vineyard Airport. But before the FBI could complete its probe, it was mysteriously halted, sources say, 5 days after the tragic crash that shocked the nation. The 3 bodies were recovered, examined that afternoon, and swiftly cremated just hours after recovery, raising more questions than answers. The official explanation for the crash was an accident caused by pilot error, according to the NTSB. But Madsen and other sources close to Kennedy reveal the 38-year-old scion was determined to find his father's killers, and it had recently obtained a cache of top-secret files. Dun, 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 dun. Are you paying attention, Dragon?
I am. I'm just receiving a phone call, but trying to close my phone.
Madsen recalls he wanted to hire 4 or 5 investigative journalists and hand us all the same packet of information and documents he had recently received and say, go and use this and anything else you find and figure out who killed my dad. But it never came to that, unfortunately. Kennedy believed the government's probe into his dad's murder was slipshod and too quickly blamed Lee Harvey Oswald as a lone assassin. He wanted to uncover enough evidence to have his father's remains exhumed, a friend says. Quote, John came to believe that J. Edgar Hoover and his henchmen at the FBI would have been the only people who could have gained access to the body and also had a motive to kill and cover up, says the friend. They didn't approve of the way JFK and his brother Bobby, who was then Attorney General, were running the country. Other experts agree there was a cover-up. Some say it involved the Kennedy family, so the information wouldn't paint them or John's memory in a bad light. After an exhaustive investigation, best-selling author Steve David Heyman published Trials and Tragedy in 2007. It exposed what he called a masking of the truth. There's no question in my mind, having examined papers that were not released to the public, that there was a cover-up, says Heyman. Dun, 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 dun. And to finish off here, it says, quote, I don't know why they sat on this material, but it wouldn't be the first time that a government agency has committed fraud or withheld information. So, well, they said they solved it, but it doesn't sound to me like it's actually conclusive. It sounds, again, like a theory.
Well, I'm still having a lot of question here. Why would they cremate after just, retrieving the body instead of doing some kind of investigation on how the death rules and so on?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't quite follow you. You want to know what?
Well, when you retrieve a body, right, you're supposed to do some investigation.
Forensic, an autopsy, you mean?
Forensic autopsy. And yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they do that and cremate the body?
I think they probably did. I think they did do an autopsy.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Let me ask, let me just Google that. Did they do an autopsy? I have to make sure. A lot of time has passed since that day. Did they do an autopsy on JFK Jr.? On the evening of July 21st, the bodies were autopsied at the County Medical Examiner's Office and taken from Hyannis to Duxbury, Massachusetts, where they were cremated in the Mayflower Cemetery crematorium. The families announced their plans for memorial services the same day.
I rest my case. They did an autopsy. My bad.
Yeah. So, do you want me to tell you what I think is really going on here?
Go ahead.
They're cherry picking a little bit of information that is factual, but they are drawing you to an incorrect conclusion. I've covered more murder investigations in my career than I can remember. Like hundreds, literally, over my life. Anytime there is a death, something like this, a murder, a killing, anything, really any crime, investigators, when they're doing their job properly, have always indicated to me at the beginning of an investigation that they are looking at all possibilities. Everything is on the table. They're ruling nothing out. That is the point here. So at the beginning of this investigation, as soon as JFK Jr.'s plane crashed, of course, we didn't know anything. Investigators knew nothing. So in order to begin their investigation properly, they don't want to go in with preconceived ideas. They don't want to go into the investigation prejudiced, self-prejudiced in any way. So they leave all options on the table, every possible scenario, including the possibility that he might have been murdered, including the possibility that may have been put forward at the time that someone may have fired something from a boat in the area to take the plane down, to shoot it down. Those were all things that were considered at the time, along with a variety of other options. Was it bad weather? Did that contribute to it? I remember there were many questions about that. Was there a malfunction, a mechanical malfunction with the aircraft? All of these things were considered. So it wasn't just that there was a murder investigation that was then shut down later. There was an investigation. There were investigations into the crash, and they were looking at all of these different possibilities. And then as they gathered evidence, they ruled out certain things because the evidence didn't support those possibilities. They realized that that wasn't the case for this, that wasn't the case for that. They came to the conclusion, based on the evidence that they had, that it was pilot error that resulted in the crash, based on the evidence available to them. So that's really what it is. So when they say that, yes, they say that it was in the beginning a murder investigation, that is true. But to then say that somehow the National Transportation Safety Board became involved and ordered the murder investigation shut down, that is not, that I would not say that that is a statement made in proper context. Not at all.
It might be accurate.
It's not contextually accurate. Over time, the murder, the possibility or the investigation into murder as a possible reason for the crash, like a bomb, that kind of thing, that was basically shown to be not a viable theory. And so the FBI, or the cops investigating it, came to the conclusion that it wasn't a bomb. They found the plane, they found the bodies, they didn't see any evidence of a bomb taking the plane down. They didn't see any evidence of it being a murder. That's the truth, I would say. And that is, but that's the way it goes with the Kennedy family. A million different theories and about conspiracies circulating around the Kennedy family and the tragedies that have befallen the Kennedy name. I do feel for the family, and I can't imagine how they even deal with life in a real way when everything about their existence following the JFK assassination has become surreal and an entry point for many people into a surreal world of conspiracy theories, which will never end, in my estimation, even if we get every last piece of factual information in terms of documents and testimony and whatever other evidence that might come out. It would never matter now. We'll never know the truth about many of these things.
Well, the case is 60 or 70 year old, right? So It's long gone, I think. And
Well, in the
let's
case
put
of
it.
JFK Jr., 25 years, but yeah.
Yeah, some cases are cold now.
So, yeah. And a lot of people, believing that, and I hate to even say it, but a lot of people believing that JFK Jr. is still out there somewhere. And a lot of people are focused on what Trump is going to do when he names his running mate. In fact, some people thinking that this guy right here is going to be the guy because they
Oh,
think he's coming back.
whoa.
But
I just heard an explosion, guys.
an
Two
explosion,
explosions. I don't know what's going on, but there's two boom I just heard.
explosions
Yeah,
in Montreal.
in that direction. Okay, that kind of. Sorry. Again. Okay, you know what?
Explosions.
Yeah, I'm going outside, I think. That's not normal, guys. Do I have my key? Oh, okay. I've got my key, but that's where. I'm sorry, guys, but this is breaking news. What's going on? I did you heard that?
I did. Is there anything in the sky? Can you see anything? Turn the camera so we can see what's going on out there.
First two boom was in that direction. Now there's one. Now there's one in that direction, and I'm not sure that there's a firework tonight, or probably it is. Hey guys, y a-tu des fireworks à soir? Tu des feux d'artifice? Oh, it was firework, guys. That's the weird thing. Oh, it was booming. I mean, normally I thought that there were no fireworks this year, but sounds like we have some.
Why do we have fireworks tonight?
For the interruption, that was weird.
Fireworks tonight? It's not Canada Day. I don't know. That's weird. Looks like we've lost Dragon's connection there. Well, a little bit of a false alarm. He's in Montreal, by the way. I'll just pull him down until he reconnects. Anyway, that's what's going on with the JFK crash mystery. And I would say still unsolved. Well, solved maybe because if you think that what investigators came up with is the truth, then they solved it. If it was pilot error, that's the case solved. If they're suggesting otherwise, I would say that their evidence, they're going to have to do a little bit better than just some claims from people, and that's not conclusive evidence at all. But it fuels the Kennedy conspiracy theories even further. National Examiner. But hey, remember, you heard it here first. Because we gave you next week's news today, which is a lot more than Alex Jones does because he only gives you tomorrow's news today. We're way ahead of the curve. Anyway, Dragon, a little bit of excitement there. Sir, please wrap things up for us. Give us your final comments as we head into the final stretch here tonight.
Final comment. Well, I'm gonna give you a week news before everything started up. I got the location for next week, 13 on the July, 2 o'clock, where there's going to be some interruption in Montreal made by the pro-Palestinian protesters. So I might follow that for you guys, for sure. So
all right.
I would be on the case. So got it.
All right. We will look forward to your coverage of that. And I will be back tomorrow night. We have special guests lined up for you tomorrow evening. Pastor Arthur Pavlovsky will join us here on Maverick News for a feature interview. And that will again be all focused on freedom. So we're really looking forward to having that conversation with Pastor Art tomorrow night, right here on the Maverick News Channel, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love you guys. Catch you tomorrow on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.